Board of Education to order. First up is verification the meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Excellent, thank you. Second on our general business is opportunity for public comment. We are now at the section of our meeting where there is an opportunity for citizens to speak. Each individual will be limited to 2 to 3 minutes time to speak in order for us to hear from the community and then get on with the agenda of our meeting. We will signal a speaker 2.5 minutes in order to allow a wrap-up of their comments. If there are 6 speakers or less, speakers will be notified at 3 minutes, but allowed up to 5 minutes to complete their comments. We expect all speakers to honor our time limit, refrain from using any inappropriate language in any manner, and be respectful in their comments. Speakers who do not meet these expectations may be prohibited from speaking at future board or committee meetings. We also expect that the audience will be respectful of the speaker and of the board and refrain from responding with verbal comments, cheering, applause, or other behavior that will detract from the meeting. Please note that no obstructions can be created between the board and the audience, and that the area behind the speaker and podium will be clear during public comment. Also, in order to respect our speakers and meeting participants, please silence your cell phones. All righty. First up, Sam D'Amico.
All right. Good evening. Tonight I'd like to once again speak in opposition to the superintendent's signage removal directive. While I acknowledge that the Finance and Facilities meeting may not be the most appropriate setting for my comment, I am utilizing once again every resource I have to voice my concerns of this policy as I see necessary. The superintendent enacted a directive without asking to hear teachers, students, and committee members, or even the Board of Education on the matter prior to the decision being made. Nonetheless, since the decision has been made, we have heard from our community members, and where the strong majority of them stand is evidently clear. While 7 board members have been silent on this issue, our community is asking for support. They are voicing their concerns, and you aren't listening. From emails being completely ignored to deliberately vague statements being made and the community being left out of the majority of this conversation at the board level and administrative level, and emails being copied and pasted from teacher to teacher, from parent to parent, and from student to student, the people of this district are tired of being ignored. Students have stood at this podium, almost in tears, explaining their stories as to their personal experiences as to why they want these signs in our classroom and why they feel that that's an important representation of their education. While board members sit and watch and then move on like nothing is wrong. Teachers have stood at this podium sharing their stories about how they pride themselves on creating an inclusive environment for their students with the help of the signage, and you completely ignore them. While administration and the Board of Education likes to say that they create an inclusive environment and they encourage an inclusive environment for all students, staff members, and parents, they take away support systems from staff members when they need it the most. Community members and parents have stood up at this podium sharing stories of their LGBTQ+ students and or why they feel this signage should remain in schools, and they too are ignored. A lot has come from this discussion about signage and the environment we want to make for all students, teachers, and parents. And I hope what comes in the end of this discussion is a Board of Education that proves they support all students, all schools, and all voices being heard, instead of just saying it. Administration may not have cared about what teachers, parents, and students thought about the signs prior to their decision being made, but nevertheless, we are making our voices heard now. We have heard from more than 3,000 parents, teachers, and students on a petition made by the Waukesha Alliance for Education. We've heard probably close to 100 to 200 speakers collectively at the last 3 or 4 meetings, including policy, F&F, and teaching and learning, and yet no action has been done since then. Mr. Montillo, Mr. Como, Mr. Dietz, and Mr. McCaffrey, it is time to do your job, and that's not a lot to ask for. We are asking you to listen to us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sam. Next up is Sarah Harrison.
Hello. I also come before you today to remind you of my position on the signage removal policy. Advocates for Youth states on their website that a safe space is a place where anyone can relax and be fully self-expressed without fear of being made to feel uncomfortable, unwelcome, or challenged on account of biological sex, race or ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, cultural background, age, or physical or mental ability. It is a place where the rules guard each person's self-respect, dignity, and feelings, and strongly encourage everyone to respect others. As the parent of two Waukesha students, I teach my kids that our home is a safe space and that their school should be a safe place as well. That bullying others for any reason, including being different from them, is not okay. Unfortunately, not all homes are a safe space for all, and that's why it's especially important for us to make the school a safe space, especially for those kids who don't have that at home. Safe for all means safe for those who see things the way I do, and safe for those who do not. Those of any political, social, and economic background. People of all genders, all sexual identities, and all communities. Anyone from any situation should feel safe at school. The idea that a safe space sign is included in the group of banned political signs is offensive to me personally. I don't see any reason that a particular political party or group would benefit or suffer due to the posting of these signs, but it's proven that students can benefit from the posting of these signs. So I urge you to reverse the dictum that these signs were removed. And if it doesn't happen, then I urge the school board to take action and allow for it to be reposted. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Next up is Chuck Harrison.
Okay. Hi. I'm also here to talk about the signs. Okay, so I've come here before to talk about signs, and I'm basically going to reiterate what I've been saying, and that's that I have felt very distant at schools. Like, I felt isolated, and I felt like I'm not necessarily included when I go to school. And that's because I'm in a school district where the board and the superintendent are allowing, or are rather not allowing, people to say that I'm safe at school through signage. And in order to feel safe, I urge you to honestly just reverse that directive. Signs have been removed for something as simple as multicolored text. That sign in particular was stating that the board, or the school district rather, has an anti-discrimination policy. And I'm just confused, honestly, because I haven't heard a single logical reason to support this directive, and I haven't heard it. I've only heard an overwhelming amount of people who want this to be removed, and I'd like to know why it hasn't been, and I'd like to know why you're not listening to us as a community, and I'd like ultimately to feel comfortable in schools as a queer student. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. And our fourth speaker this evening is Paul Ruiz.
Good evening. Thank you. Number of students failing at least one class in 2019 at Waukesha North was 54, and in 2020 that number rose to 292, an increase of 440.7%. In 2019, South had a total of 135 students failing at least one class or more, and in 2020 that number rose to 387, for an increase of 186.7%. In 2019, Waukesha West had a total of 74 students failing at least one class or more. And in 2020, that number rose to 268 for an increase of 262.2%. We just had a workshop, you guys did, across the hall, was upstairs last week. And you talked about giving teachers raises, of all things. And I just have a suggestion on that. Let's give non-essential workers non-essential raises. And if they didn't want to work and do their job and get these kids taught up and caught up, then I have no interest in giving raises out. They also want to tell me how much they care about these students. And they care so much for these students. They care so much. Oh, how much they care. Well, how about we add 20 days to the school year and get them caught up? Do they care that much? Do you think they care that much? I don't. I don't think they care that much. I think they care what they want to care about, what suits them. As far as these signs go in the hall, Mr. Siebert, if you pull a McCaffrey and take this and end this, you'll find nobody in your corner. And I hate to say that, but you will lose my respect for one of this. I have no need for that. Just because there is, and Sam will learn in life, there's a difference between a vocal minority and a silent majority. And this town spoke in the last election and what direction it wanted this school board to go in. I don't agree with these things. I find homosexuality to be a sin, and it is offensive to me on its face. That is where I come from and where it's taught in my house. And these are things that are adult subjects. And if you want to bring this up here to an adult subject into a group like this, then we can do it. I have no problem doing it. This is where I come from. This is what I believe. And I do not weigh my sin and say my sin is less than someone else's. It's not. And that's why I don't like discussing it. Because it comes off as that's what I'm saying. And I'm not trying to say it. And that's why I don't want this as a discussion. But it's been thrust upon this group. And in my family and in my kids, this is all part of propaganda. Signs and flags and stuff are just commonly found as parts of propaganda. And I don't want my kids subject to it. I know what was right and wrong. And also the flag. There's a flag that's a rainbow-colored flag. Where does that come from? Why, of all things? That was a sign to Noah that God would not destroy the earth through flood anymore. And so it was done to offend people like me with Christian belief. I have nothing against anyone. I hold no ill will to anyone. That's not my point when I speak of these things. These are things that I would rather not talk about. I would rather talk about this. I'd rather talk about getting our kids caught up and our kids educated and ready out for their next voyage in life. That's what I'd rather talk about. But this is what we've been dealt with. So, thanks.
Alrighty, that ends our public comment section of the meeting. Moving on to action items. First action item is approval of the minutes from the October 11th meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Dietz. Any discussion on the minutes?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Moving on to the approval of the vouchers. Sherry, any questions?
No, there were no questions this month.
Okay, so I will be looking for a motion for approval of the vouchers. Mr. Dietz, thank you very much. Is there a second? I will second. Any discussion?
No.
No discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. The final action item of the evening is the approval of the 2021-2022 charter school contracts.
Yeah, the agreement starts in the 21-22 school year, but it actually runs through August of 2026. So we've approved 5-year commitments in the past. Before you is the Waukesha Engineering Preparatory Academy Agreement and the Waukesha Academy of Health Professions, agreements for the board to, or the committee to consider. No significant language changes were made to the document. It might even be verbatim minus date changes and updating of names involved for signing. But This document has come through F&F just because of its contractual nature, but really has no financial teeth to it or cost to it. It's strictly kind of a service agreement. So I would ask for approval of both of these contracts for the running through August of 2026.
All right, we're looking for a motion, so we can discuss it, right?
I'll move to approve as presented.
Excellent, thank you, Mr. Dietz.
Should we do one at a time, though? Or should we do them together?
I don't have,
Yeah, but either or, it
fine
doesn't.
either way.
Yeah, whatever you think, it doesn't matter. They're, from looking at them, they're very similar. And
They're
boilerplate.
very similar.
Yeah. So, we're just wondering, just in case one gets shot down and one doesn't, that we won't, is that what your
Yeah.
concern is? Well, we
I
can
doubt-
take them,
I
I doubt it's gonna happen,
I
right?
doubt, but
We could do them individually, so I'll be looking for, you wanna remove your, okay.
I'll move to approve the Waukesha Academy of Health Professions agreement as presented.
Excellent. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion on the Academy of Health Professions Charter School Agreement?
I think Joy.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have something?
Yeah, it's
Okay, go.
obviously, I think,
Perfect.
I won't speak for others, but it's a great program.
Yep.
I know people have gone through it and graduated at UW-Madison, I think, in 2 years, and she's very successful. I looked through the contract, and I didn't see anything that caused any or concern. Did the administration find anything that suggested needs to be pushed back or changed?
No,
Okay.
no. And quite honestly, in the 5 years of the current contract, I've never had a single question on the contract.
Okay.
So I'm assuming it covers everything in that period of time if we haven't had any questions raised.
Sure, yeah, it's a great program, glad it's here.
Mr. Como?
I just wanted to know if any of the statutes have changed for charter schools at all over the last 5 years that would have an impact on this contract. Did we have our attorneys look at them?
Yeah, this went through legal review. I forget the law firm we use. No, it's Reading reviewed it, so I'm assuming any statutory adjustments have been made, but I'm not, this isn't my area of expertise, so I'm not aware of any statutory changes that would impact the program, but we could have a follow-up question as well.
Okay, so, and you said our legal team did review. Who was our legal team?
For some reason, we've always used a different attorney for the review of the charter agreements. I'm not sure the history of that. It's not Bulow Vetter. I can't think of the name of it, but that's the history. I don't know if someone was on the group that was forming all of this and they just used that. I don't know the history behind it, but I do know that the review did take place. I saw the bill for the services as well. I just can't remember the firm's name off the top of my head.
And how strong of a group do we have for the charter school board?
I've not heard any issues with a lack of a board or an active board. Last time I was really involved with them was during the referendum information campaigns. I met with both boards, and they both seemed strong in numbers and in the backgrounds that the board members had. So I don't believe there's been a shift from that in the last 2 years or 3 years.
Okay, because I know that there have been times where, there's been fewer
come and go,
members.
right?
And yeah, so, maybe one of the things you could do between now and Wednesday, if this passes, Darren, if you could
Sure.
just follow up on that. Because the board usually has representation from the community and has really been very important partners in the past. And so I'd like to have a little better understanding of the partnership and the participation at the board level.
And I'll bring back the law firm's name as well.
Okay.
Were there any changes made to the contract outside of the principal and the superintendent's names?
Just dates and.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the template
Okay,
is the same.
alrighty. Any other questions regarding the Academy of Health Sciences? Alrighty, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, 4-0. Alrighty, next up is, we're looking for a motion for the Waukesha Engineering Preparatory Academy.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second
Mr.
it.
Como, any discussion on this contract?
Just the same questions for this
Okay.
one as the other,
Yeah.
Okay.
just to tie it up.
I didn't
Tie
see
the
anything.
bow up, I guess.
Mr. Como?
Yeah, and both of these academies have been wonderful opportunities for our students. It's been a while since I've been to either of them, a few years, but anytime that I've spoken with the students or anyone involved, some community members, positive things. This has really opened up the doors for students who are interested in very specific areas. And I know that there was a push a while ago to get more female students involved in the Engineering Academy. Do we have a sense of what that enrollment is at this time of females?
Oh, but you'll have it by Wednesday.
Okay,
Oh, that's fair.
appreciate that.
Alrighty, any other? Mr. Dietz?
Mr. Clark, just if, I think it's been a while since I've had an update too from these two academies. Maybe sometime in the future, if we could have someone either come to this meeting and present or the full board meeting, just to give us an overview of
Yeah.
how things are going at the two academies.
Good idea.
Anything else? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Alrighty, that concludes our action item section of the evening. Next up is discussion information items, first of which is referendum debt report.
Yeah, Michelle Weiberg is with us virtually, and I thought since we just approved the final tax levy for this year, and we once again defeased for our long-term referendum approved debt, that we'd have Michelle come in and just give you a quick update on what that means and what our debt structure looks like, or what more importantly, what it'll look like come April when all these payments are made. And just kind of go over, again, our overall strategy and answer any questions you might have. So, Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Can I just get a thumbs up, make sure everyone can hear me?
Yep. You're good.
Okay, great. And I hope I look better than I do to myself. I look like I'm coming through fog on my end, so hopefully it's clearer on your end.
Yeah.
But I'm going to just share a little document here.
And the document she's sharing is also in board docs for your review.
Great, so hopefully you can see that on the screen. I wanted to just first start with a quick recap of the 2018 referendum financings. So first of all, the actual interest rates when we locked in the debt was significantly lower than what we had projected pre-referendum. So we had a couple phases to the financing plan. Pre-referendum, we had projected the interest rate in the first phase to be 3.25%, and on the second phase to be 3.5%. The actual interest rates of those phases, phase 1 was 2.08%, and originally phase 2 was 2.10%, and then we refinanced that loan last year, reducing that interest rate to 1.05%. So this has resulted in a lower projected tax impact as well as significantly reduced interest costs versus pre-referendum estimates. I believe prior to any prepayments or refinancings, the interest cost is about $6 million less than pre-referendum estimates. But there is current and future prepayment flexibility on these debt issuances, and that flexibility is there for the district to continue to manage the overall levy and tax rate. So as Darren just mentioned, this is something that the board is looking at on an annual basis, making decisions about the levy and allowing yourselves to prepay debt where appropriate. The Fund 39 portion of the levy, or the debt service portion of the levy, in 2021, or what was levied last fall for 2021, and what you just levied this fall for 2022, both included approximately $5 million available for debt prepayment. So allowed for not only current debt service payments due in those years, but also the ability to prepay debt. So as we look at that for 2022, I realize there's a lot of numbers on this screen. But on the left-hand side, we are looking at those two debt issues that remain, the Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the 2018 referendum financings. So we have the 2019 notes that are listed first, and then the 2021 general obligation refunding bonds. Again, that issue was a refinancing of the original Phase 2, reducing the interest cost. And it is that issue, the 2021 bonds, that we are able to prepay immediately. So when we refinanced that loan with a bank, we kind of negotiated this prepayment provision in there, knowing that we would likely have the opportunity to prepay debt. And you are able to prepay those maturities that are highlighted in green, so the 2023 through 2027 maturities of that loan on April 1 of 2022, and only on that date. So it's kind of a one chance opportunity to prepay the 2021 bonds. On the right-hand side of the page, we show you what that looks like then. So after a payoff of the 2021 bonds, obviously the 2019 notes would remain as they are currently, no prepayment at all. And then the 2021 bonds, all of those maturities that were highlighted in green would disappear. So they would all be prepaid. I call your attention to this column that we have highlighted in gray. So this is showing you total Fund 39 or debt service that exists after this prepayment. So you can see where your annual payments are about $6,250,260 through 2025, and then you have a pretty significant drop in the payments in 2026 and thereafter. Savings associated with this prepayment is $217,950. So that's all interest cost that is being saved. But as we look at this gray column and we think about what actions the board may take in the future, if you have the opportunity to manage the levy and manage the tax rate in the future, as you have done in the past 2 years, you would kind of continue to prepay debt and you would start chipping away now at the 2019 note issue. And we've kind of extrapolated out what that might look like, and with debt service levies equal to about what they are today, you would be prepaying all of this debt in about 2 years. So 2 more debt service levies, the one that you would be setting in 2022 and 23, and then there'd be a little portion remaining for the debt service levy that you set in 2024. So given the past, if the future looks anything like the past couple of years, this referendum debt financing could be paid in full in 2025, the last payment in 2025, which would be paying off all of the referendum debt 4 years earlier than what was projected. The final page just gives you a summary of all of the actions that have been taken thus far via prepayments and refinancings of the referendum debt. So in 2021, you made a prepayment on those 2020 notes, saving in or reducing interest cost equal to $820,050. In 2021, you also refinanced the 2020 notes, saving in total $281,508, but we're about to prepay those notes. So there was really only 1 year of interest savings that you'll realize, and that's the savings that you're realizing here in the 2021-22 fiscal year, equal to $48,806. And then the 2022 prepayment that we just saw on the previous page, which again will prepay the remaining refunding bonds, would yield a reduction of interest costs of $217,950. So through various actions taken over the last couple of years since this debt has been in place, the district has reduced interest cost by $1,086,806. After this prepayment that would occur on April 1 of 2022, again with the levy that was just set last month, the district will have repaid 54% of the total principal of the loans associated with the 2018 referendum. So the first debt issue was done in 2019, so just three years after the first debt issuance, you will have repaid over half of the total principal outstanding. So this is really tremendous. I think the original financing plan was certainly, had a rapid repayment of debt with a 10-year overall payback of debt. And through different actions of the board over time, you're going to pay that back even faster, reducing interest costs even further. So happy to answer any questions. There's no action we need from the board this evening. This was really just informing you of what you've already accomplished and then what you're about to accomplish regarding early payoff of a portion of the 2021 bonds.
Yeah, so our referendum passed for $60 million. Thank you to our constituents. We had 66% of our constituents agree with that. Can you, Michelle, help put this in perspective for our audience as to how rapid this is compared to what other $60 million referendum paybacks have looked like in your experience? And you've been doing this for a number of years?
I have been doing this for a number of years. Yeah, and I don't have an exact statistic for you. The more typical repayment of a project of this size would be a 20-year debt issue. Now, whether that's prepaid in some shape or form, but right out of the gate, a 20-year debt issue is far more typical that we see for Wisconsin school district debt issuance. So I would say that right out of the gate, the 10-year issuance was unique. You were in a unique position as a school district. You had basically no debt outstanding when you pursued this referendum. So that put you in a position to really, focus on repaying this issue and then prepaying it. And again, these are just estimates at this point, but to potentially repay that issue in it may be as short as 6 years versus 10 is even more unique. So certainly, great planning by the district preceding the referendum, putting you in the position to be able to pay off the debt this quickly.
Well, we also have to give you and PMA some credit here too. We said we wanted to, test the waters a bit in this, and you and your team came up with great strategies, and you presented those to us, and we decided to choose to obviously take some of those. And your experience and knowledge in the strategy area really is fantastic. PMA has done a wonderful job as a partner of this district for many years, and we thank you for those opportunities that you've presented to us so we could make these kinds of choices too.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I echo Mr. Como's comments as well. Referendums can be tricky business. We go to the community, constituents ask for $60-odd million. And I remember I wasn't on the board when this happened, but the administration toured a lot of schools and had open forums and roundtables to discuss this. And being somewhat of a skeptic, I remember looking at it and the projections about interest and debt repayment. I've seen it not in this district, but other districts and other referendums where they say, look, here's the picture, here's the projections, and then they come back once it's passed and say, sorry, it's going to cost you a whole lot more money, it's going to take a lot more time. The administration did the exact opposite, which I think speaks a lot to the quality of people we have in the administration and the consultants. So instead of shooting high or shooting low and try to induce the constituents to pass it, the projections were reasonable and conservative and gave our constituents the best opportunity to really look at what the possibilities could be. They came out conservative, which was great. Interest rates came out low, which is great, and we didn't just simply, or the administration didn't simply sit on that and let this run. So, yeah, the debt defeasance, everything looks great, so thank you.
Is there any other questions, comments? Nothing? All right, fantastic. Thank you for your time this evening. We're much appreciated.
My pleasure, thank you.
Thank you.
Through the fog.
All righty. Our next item up for discussion information is the monthly budget report.
Okay. October, we had minimal revenue streams coming in October, mainly some federal grants and some state sources, but pretty typical for October. We don't see a lot in our general fund. For expenses, salaries and benefits, last month I reported that they seem like they might be a little bit high, but going through the projections after the full September and October, salaries and benefits went out, the payrolls went out, we're in good shape. Our budget will be pretty much right on, but we're in good shape and don't anticipate any issues, so. Purchase services, really, we didn't have any last month. We had a lot of big, unique items. This month, we had personal services was our biggest subcategory at $262,000, but it was really a lot of smaller purchases that went into that, nothing big out of that. Non-capital objects, large textbook spend, so we're getting caught up on our textbooks, but we had a good textbook budget this year, so it's nothing that's out of what we expect. Let's see. For our capital objects, just minor spending, but we've only spent 8% of our budget so far this year compared to 71% of it at this year, but timing of projects and things last year, we had a lot more large expenditures. Insurance and judgment, we just had our quarterly insurance payments were paid, bringing us to October at 44% of our budget spent, and that's with 2 of the payments in, so that's a good thing. No transfers, other objects, minimal spending, mainly continue to be annual membership renewals. But overall, we came in at 18.3% of our general fund spending, and last year at this time, we're at 17.72, so very comparable. Nothing out of the ordinary to report. Everything is where it's expected. For Fund 27, we had no Fund 27 revenue October, but again, that's very normal for this time of year. November is where we start to see our special education aid coming through, our categorical aid, and then our claims are starting to get paid as their expenditures are being made. Same comment with salaries and benefits. When reviewing the projections, we reviewed Fund 27, and everything looks good there also. Main spending under purchase services was for our pupil transportation and tuition to private schools, which is normal. Non-capital supplies, still the main area for Fund 27. Capital objects, there was nothing in special education for capital objects, insurance, or transfers. And the expenditures are always running a little low this year. We've spent 17.29% of our budget compared to 16% last year. So overall, in 10 and 27 are where we expect them to be. Fund 43, again, interest is our only revenues in that account. That's our referendum account. Expenses are starting to dwindle as that money has been spent, and our main spending was for contractors, which is normal. We had expenditures of $788,000 in October. Pretty soon that money should be spent completely down. We don't have that much left, so as we wrap up our projects and spend it down, we'll be removing it from this report. Any questions on the budget part of it? Okay, then there's a new tax levy document. It's, we won't go through it, it's just what you levied broken out by district, by municipality. And so as we start getting our payments in January, we'll start updating that document and bringing it back to the board, but it is ready to go. We've gotten all the levy paperwork out to the municipalities, and we've received our confirmation notes back that everybody's received there, so we are good to go there. The claims, just as I reported last month that we were starting to spend it down, we had a surplus last month, so we're back up a little bit again. I think, excuse me. I think it's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster this year, but we're still sitting at $5 million after of our fund balance, excuse me, not the fund balance, of the cash flow, daily cash flow that we use available for claims payments, which is a good position to be in, and dental's similar. We're still in a good position with dental, no big surprises there. Any questions on any budget-related items, claims, dental or health, levy?
Nope.
Easy group this month.
Good report.
Management.
Yeah, that was it.
When you have good reports, you have few questions. Or good numbers, I should say, no?
Thank you.
All righty. Next up is our 2022-2023 budget planning.
Just a couple of quick things. The first document that's in board docs for you is our tentative budget development calendar for 2024. In the board docs for you is our 22-23 budget calendar. Just, we don't follow this verbatim, but we follow it fairly closely because there's some benchmark dates that that all school districts have to follow. So that's in there just for your review, and we'll have that on the business office website too, next to our financial statements and budgets, so people can see the rough timing of the decisions that we'll be making. And then as we get near into summer, we'll have to, as always, the board will have to decide on when we want to have the budget hearing and things like that. So we'll revisit this document a few times. But I would urge anyone who's looking at this document, always check the actual agenda, because times and dates and things can change. But this gives you at least a framework as to our process going forward. The second thing, and I sent you, there's two documents. I put the hard copy of the revenue limit at your desk. I just wanted to highlight a few things because there's a lot of information, and quite honestly, a lot of things have been added to the revenue limit calculation, mainly related to the choice programs that I think is of some level of interest to the board. So I'm just going to walk you through, on the revenue limit, there's the red rectangles with white numbers in it. We'll hit on those line items in particular. So line item number 1 on the left-hand side, about just over halfway down the page, probably the bright spot's a small number, but summer school came back strongly for us this year. We had gotten it up to the highest I'd ever seen it at 134 full-time equivalent students. And then during the COVID summer of 20, it dropped to 48, but we were able to get it back to 120 this past summer. So I saw that as a promising sign, and I don't see any reason why we won't be back up into the 130s or maybe even a little higher than that at some point. Number 2 is it's a line item that's been in the revenue limit calculation the last 2 or 3 years, but it's really never impacted us, and it's related to students that go to new independent charter schools. And we don't get much information. We don't know who these students are. We don't know where they go, and I guess I'm one of the types that thinks probably none of our business, But I think it has to do with the school in Oconomowoc and maybe the new Montessori school, if I had to venture a guess. But just like on the right-hand side of the revenue limit boxes 5A and 5B, where you have the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program, the Racine Choice Program, and then the Special Needs Scholarship Program. It's the same thing where they allow us to levy the dollars, but there's an expenditure that goes along with it. Now, why it's being done differently than those other choice programs in this calculation, they don't really know the history behind that. Well, here, we get to count the students, we get to use them for equalization aid purposes, but there is a related expenditure line in the budget, so it's a net zero game. But again, a new line item. We have these 95 students aren't part of our third Friday count. We have truly, DPI releases the final revenue limit, and that they fill that in for us. So that's a new line item, but one that I don't think is going to go away anytime soon, and one that we should be monitoring going forward. 4A and 4B on the right-hand side, our The school district's dependency on the hold harmless and declining enrollment exemption jumped up significantly this year. We get just under $3 million under each, and again, that's a one-year exemption of revenue authority that you are allowed to access as a board, but then it goes away. It's not part of our base the following year. And we just got our Baird model in the email today, and it's showing actually, I think we'll have a much smaller revenue limit calculation next year than we have this year, so not the greatest news, but that's the downside of being in those exemptions, is it hurts you in the very short term. It doesn't help you in the long term at all, so. And then going back to 5A and 5B, Sherry pointed this out. I can't remember if we touched on it in our earlier meetings or not, but we've seen a big jump in, I want to say like 25 or 28% in the choice programs. Again, Wisconsin Parental Choice Program, and even the special needs scholarship program. Again, I don't know if those kids would ever have come to us, but they live in our district, they're tied to us, they're part of our school community, but they're choosing a different alternative, but we're seeing a big growth in that. Now, is that just COVID? You know, again, I think we'll just have to see where these numbers go, but choice is obviously playing a big role in where a lot of kids are going, and kids that we may or may not ever capture or never would have, regardless, as I mentioned earlier. But I do think we have to keep an eye on those numbers and at least be aware of the shift and maybe the choices that parents are making. So those are just some things, because it's easy to do the final budget approval and we never go back and really analyze final numbers. We just rush to, or Sherry and I rush to get the final budget ready for you to make a vote, but I thought we'd spend at least 5 or 10 minutes just kind of walking through some of the more, I guess, important points in the revenue limit.
All right, any questions? Mr. Montiel?
I would just note in section 1 that dealt with the summer school attendance, I believe. I was glad to see that it bounced back quite a bit from 2020, because I know we had some concern about the masking not being obligatory, and looks like at least compared to 2019, we lost a very small amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
And 19 was the highest I've ever seen it.
Yeah. And it went way down in 2020, then up to 120, so glad to see that. Yeah, thanks for the information.
Any other questions? All right. A lot of information there. All righty. Next up is the fundraising discussion, but we're postponing
That's
that, correct?
postponing.
Just want to make sure.
Postponed to December.
Okay. I saw that in board docs. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, that concludes our discussion information items. Next up is other business, recommendations for future committee meetings. Anybody has any? Anybody?
No.
Okay, well, you can always email Darren and myself, not or myself, but and myself if anything come up in the future. Okay, we do have need to adjourn. Darren?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I think we have to.
You might have to read it.
I don't have it.
Okay.
Where's it? Adjourn to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 519.85 for deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And in this case, the Oakdale tax keys.
And we do need to read the keys.
They need to read it, please.
WAKC 1360198, WAKC 1377002, and WAKC 1377003.
Excellent. Is there a second?
I may have misheard, but I think the statute may have been.
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying. That's not a 5.
Yeah, it's statute 19.85.
Oh,
Aaron,
Yeah,
one-
it looks like a 5, but it's not. It's
My
some-
mistake, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll second that.
thank you. All righty. All those in favor? Oh, it's a roll call vote, so.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.